Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. A team that we haven't talked about enough on the recruiting trail is James Franklin and the Penn State Nittany Lions landing another commitment. This is a top 8 class in the country, flipping one of the better wide receivers in the country, the third best player in the state of Pennsylvania, Tyseer Denmark, who was committed to Oregon. Penn State comes in late, flips his commitment, and this is a position that Penn State, I think, needs to add talent to. Like, you've brought in some guys that you like, but Penn State obviously had to go to the transfer portal in 2023 to get some guys immediately that can make an impact. But I think a guy like Tyseer Denmark adds some serious juice to this Penn State wide receiving group. And Dill, this is something we've talked about a lot. Like Michigan, Ohio State, they get a lot of buzz in the national media. If you're looking at a dark horse in the Big Ten, not only for this year, but just the future, you look at how James Franklin has recruited and some of the players he's hit on, this Penn State team is going to be dangerous the next couple of years. Now, before we get into it again, just want to say thank you to you guys. If you guys do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Again, the support has been absolutely awesome. Almost 6,000 subscribers. Can't thank you guys enough. So if you do enjoy it, lock in, subscribe to the channel. Dale, I'm going to kick this one off to you. Penn State, 2023, 2024. You're feeling pretty good about this program here.
I mean, I'll say it till I'm blue in the face. Like, the people calling for James Franklin's job or saying he's not doing good enough. It's like, again, Ohio State has run the show in the Big Ten for a long time, but they've also kind of run the show nationally to an extent. They've been one of the better programs consistently every year, and hence has probably made Michigan and Penn State look worse than they really are. It's like, as a Michigan fan, we were calling for Jim Harbaugh, like, oh, get him out. Jim Harbaugh is doing a really good job. It's just he couldn't beat Ohio State consistently enough. Penn State also can't beat Ohio State consistently enough. But James Franklin's still, doing a phenomenal job at this program.
And I think this program's trending up. And I get he's been there for a while, but you kind of forecast this team for the next couple of years with guys like Drew Aller, Nick Singleton, Katron Allen, this team. And then on the other side of the ball, Abdul Carter, who I think is one of the best players on the defense side of the ball in the whole entire country. Like, this team this year is going to be good. But what this team could look like in 2024, 2025, that's when it really gets special. And that's kind of where you see the gap starting to close. I talk about James Franklin, and it's like, are you going to be able to find another elite coach like that? I consider, is James Franklin a Nick Saban or Kirby Smart? Probably not. But if there's a next tier, James Franklin, I think, is comfortably at that next tier.
And that's the thing. It's like, again, he's pretty much been as good as Michigan is, aside from these past 2 years or so, and when Michigan really took off and put together a little stretch. Yeah. But right up until then, you'd probably say Penn State was a little bit better, frankly. So what he's doing, he's recruiting. He's always recruited well, but it does seem like it's picking up a little bit. At a couple of top 15 class and a top 10 class in the past 2 years. And this year looks like it's going to be probably at top 10 at least, top 15 at worst, but it's probably going to be up there in the top 10.
This is going to be a top 10 class. We'll get into some of the guys I think they'll be able to land to finish out a very nice class. You're sitting at the 7th best class in the country with a bunch of targets that I think Penn State's getting a lot of traction with. But circling back to James Franklin, and we'll wrap up the James Franklin talk. This Penn State program, I think, is trending up with a good coach. I mean, this is what a team that won 11-2 last year with won a Rose Bowl. It's a program that it just makes me scratch my head when I see the Penn State fans saying James Franklin doesn't have it in him to get the job done, and especially when
you look at Penn State fans, or is it like the Paul Feinbaums of the world who are always criticizing pretty much anybody aside from Nick Saban and Kirby Smart? So it's like there's again, I don't know that I've heard a ton of chatter out of the Penn State fans. Not that I'm wildly plugged in with like the rumor mill of the program. But I do feel like it's a lot more of like national media who are just like natural haters.
Yeah, no, I agree. And you even look at, you had like Sean Clifford, Trace McSorley, guys who were really solid college football players, maybe holding you back because you never had that elite guy. Guess what? I think Big Drew, it kind of is a certified dog. That's
going to be the thing. Drew Allard, like, you got to hope he's going to put something together because, like, when you get that top top tier quarterback, and all the talent in the world, that's when you have a chance to kind of break through and do something that, again, a Penn State hasn't done and start beating Michigan, Ohio State.
I think this could be, if Drew is ready this year, you know what I mean? That's that, and he might not be, but I really like what Penn State did. Like, they got him some meaningful snaps. We've talked about this before. He played second quarter on the road against Purdue, first game as a true freshman. Like, this dude has played in some meaningful football games. I think that's going to vastly help him in terms of if he's ready in 2023. If he's ready, I think you're looking at a bona fide top 5 defense on the defense side of the ball. You have one of the best offensive lines in the country. I think you have one of the best running back duos in the country. I think the wide receivers, a question mark, but there's some talent in that room. This is a team that's extremely dangerous in 2023. And then you have Drew and Nick Singleton and Katron Allen back in 2024.
And Abdul Carter. Like, they're going to be a squad. And again, they've recruited really well. They're going to have a lot of young talent filling in the cracks. Again, if they just put together some more playmakers on the edge to go, like, kind of be pros, if you will, which was one thing it felt like they were missing at times. And I did think Parker Washington could play, but they didn't always have that guy who could make a big play for him or do that.
Jahan Dotson was that guy, and you saw Penn State make some, like, that was massive for that offense. Now, getting into this, I'll get in my little, like, nerd recruiting bag a little bit. I mean, you're locking up the state of Pennsylvania. You have the top 3 now with Tyseer Denmark in the fold. You have the 3 top kids from the state of Pennsylvania. You're continuing to build a very strong offensive line group. But I want to talk about what this class could look like in looking at the official visitors that were at Penn State last weekend, where they're getting a ton of traction for. Benedict Ume, a guy that hasn't, if you look at him, like 6'5", 260, he looks like an Under Armour, like one of those, like, just ripped. I mean, he's a guy, I would probably comp him to, like, someone like Odafe Owe, where he's raw. He hasn't played football at a high level. You check out his film, he's playing, like, in a park in Toronto. But, man, he is a guy that is an All-American if you get him coached up. You have Carter Nelson, one of the best tight ends in the country, on campus. And then they're getting a ton of traction for a guy in T.A. Cunningham, who Miami's making a big push for. Penn State's done a phenomenal job developing and recruiting that defensive line. They are very deep and talented, and it looks like they're going to bring in another class that has a ton of depth and talent. If you could hit on 2 to 3 guys of Benedict Ume, Carter Nelson, or T.A. Cunningham, you're looking at a top 8 class with some massive, massive upside in terms of what these guys can be. If you're a Penn State fan, like, you got to be just absolutely thrilled about what the future looks like, especially kind of getting out of just having to play Ohio State and Michigan every single year, because that's another thing to talk about. Like, it's just so hard to get to a college football playoff, to win a national championship, when you do have to kind of run the table against both those 2 dominant programs as well.
And that's the problem, because at the end of the day, you lose one of those games, you're not playing in the Big Ten title, and you really don't have room to lose a game in the regular season unless it's to, like, an Oregon like Ohio State did, because then you can at least make it back to the title game. But if you don't do it, it's really, really hard to kind of be that team to come out. And if you can't win your conference title and you have one loss, you're right, it's almost impossible to get into the playoff.
And so that's what you see, and it's like, sounds like it leaves a bitter taste, because Penn State wants national titles, but it's like, you look back, like, Penn State, 11-2 Rose Bowl victory. Like, that's a phenomenal season.
No, it's like crazy. You think it's like bad, and people are.
And I get it as a Michigan fan.
You didn't beat the 2 big dogs in the conference. That's obviously disappointing, and you got kind of boat raced by Michigan. But again, to win a Rose Bowl, that's really, really hard.
I as a Michigan fan, though, completely get it. Like, I even, like, looking back at last year, like, undefeated Big Ten title, then you lose to TCU in the college football playoffs, and, like, I would be lying if I didn't look back at that season and say there's a little bitter taste in my mouth, in the sense that we probably should have beaten the TCU team to get to the national championship game. So I get it from Penn State fans, but I also think that discussion of, is the grass greener? Like, if you get rid of James Franklin, your recruiting takes a dip for a little bit. Who's coming into this Penn State program that's a better coach than James Franklin? Because could name you. They'll tell me if I'm missing any coaches that I would take over Dabo Swinney or James Franklin. I'd probably take Kirby, Nick Saban, Dabo Swinney maybe, but he's, like, not really getting with the times. Jim Harbaugh and James Franklin, I'm probably Michigan guy. Like, it's close.
I mean, probably just because last 2 years Harbaugh, but the 2 years before, it's probably James Franklin.
Yeah, you're probably taking James Franklin. And then like Lincoln Riley, maybe. But that's about it. Like that's how good James Franklin is. When you have a coach of that caliber who's continuing to recruit, and you see that, like, if this was a chart on a graph, like, this program is going in the right direction so clearly. Penn State fans have to be thrilled. The recruiting taking off.
He's right around that number 10, probably. Real for me, James Franklin. Like,
I don't know if I can.
3 or 4. I don't know. Well, you are missing some guys.
Who? Brian Kelly?
Dabo, Nick.
I said Kirby Smart, Dabo Sweeney, Nick Saban. And then I think it's like after that, like, there's arguments to be made.
Okay, fair. You know what? That's
Am
fair.
I sleeping on anyone? Brian Kelly, maybe. Lincoln Riley, maybe. Ryan Day, no. I don't want Ryan Day.
He's not made any difference at Ohio State.
No, he hasn't. Sark hasn't done anything at Texas. It's really hard to find.
That's fair. You're probably right, actually. It's crazy. But
even going back to what he did at Vanderbilt, like, that is the hardest place in the world to win, and he was winning SEC games consistently. I think James Franklin has to be one of the most disrespected coaches in the country right now, and especially I think he's going to wake a lot of people up. And I love having Manny Diaz as your DC. This program, as a Michigan fan, I'd be lying if I wasn't shaking in my boots a little bit, because this Penn State team and program is clearly going in the right direction. We'll leave it at that. Again, James Franklin, put some respect on the guy's name. He's a phenomenal coach. Penn State gets another big one in Tyseer Denmark. Appreciate you guys checking the fellas out, and we'll talk to y'all later. Peace.